Welcome to the Religious Treehouse. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Jody. How are you doing today, Matthew?
I'm doing good. We're talking about Bible stuff today, so I'm in my element. I'm excited. How are you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. We're going to be talking about something that I've always considered to be very pretty and dainty, and that's the way the conversation's going to go, right?
Sure. Yeah, we're talking about Seraphim today, and I'm really interested. Yeah, let's just get into it. I'm really interested on what your conceptions of Seraphim were and are before I sent you to do some research.
Little glowing balls of light that were like fairies that just danced around and granted magical wishes and gave you comfort and joy and just all the peace in your heart.
Do you know where this idea came from, or like how this idea came to you?
Yes, I do now from popular media.
Cool. Okay. Um, what media?
Like just supernatural.
Oh,
There's a K-pop group called the Seraphim. There is Seraphim in Has Been Hotel. No, not
okay.
yes, Has Been Hotel. Have you seen Has Been Hotel?
I saw the first episode and I thought, oh, this is really good. I should check it out more. And then I just never watched it again.
You need to finish it, okay? It's so good. But that's about in popular media because like angels in like the biblical sense, I was like, oh, it's just a person that comes down. They have wings. Hallelujah. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today.
No.
It's funny to me because the seraphim are mentioned like five times maybe in the Bible. So like their fame, their if you've heard of seraphim, like I don't know, I feel like they're one of the lesser know, um, you know, Christian biblical monster type things. But like if you have heard of them, I don't have any idea what you think about them because they're only mentioned about five times in here. And they're only translated as seraphim usually once, and that's going to be in Isaiah. But no, these are not going to be little balls of light. I mean, maybe they are fiery, but they're not going to be like joyful little creatures. That's for sure.
Well, damn. What are we supposed to talk about then? Is it going to be more Old Testament destruction?
You know, that's my favorite thing to talk about. So, of course, this is going to be some Old Testament destruction.
Where do they first show up?
Right. Okay. So, yeah, let's kind of outline this episode. We're going to talk about, what are seraphim? General, hey, have you heard this word before? And then there's going to be five separate passages that they're mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, and we'll kind of go through them piece by piece. We'll focus on two of them a little more, one in Isaiah 6, one in Numbers 21, and we'll briefly mention the other three. And then we'll kind of talk about how they're all intertwined because they all are kind of referencing each other. But yeah, so I think before we kind of get into the meat of this discussion, I think we should recall our episode about the Leviathan,
Mhm.
because if you want to learn more about this stuff, I definitely recommend Esther Hamori's book God's Monsters, which is where we're structuring our episode around because it's much easier to structure these conversations around other people who have already structured this than for me to just be like, let's talk about this idea and create it all on my own. Both are fun. That's neither here nor there.
We're here to encourage discussion, and we're doing that by displaying it ourselves.
Yeah. So yeah, Esther Hamori, God's Monsters, great book. Check it out. It talks about all this stuff and more. But it's easy to think about these biblical creatures and kind of tame them a little bit, make them softer as you kind of have described them. I think the most famous example is the cherubim, which we should do an episode on at some point as well. And cherubim are, somewhat related to the seraphim here.
Cupid.
Right. And that's, I think, a misrepresentation of how they're portrayed, at least in the biblical narratives, as we've reinterpreted them over time. They've been tamed to be cute little babies, which has no basis in the biblical text. So I think when we're thinking about these creatures, these monsters, it's important to think of them in their own terms and to not force our cute little interpretations about them onto the text. So I think imagining these as monstrous beings, as being probably scary and mean, to put it nicely, I think is very important when we talk about these monsters of the Bible.
But they come from heaven. How could they be mean if they come down from heaven?
Yeah, well, I don't think I think the cleansing of heaven and having this the throne room of God as we see in Isaiah 6, having that be a peaceful little fun clouded area with people singing and smiling. I think that is also very very tamed. So just because things are from heaven certainly does not mean they're kind and squishy and smiley, and we'll talk about that.
So what do they look like then? What are
Yeah,
they?
so we really have like two different types of seraphim. We have like the earthly seraphim, and that's the kind of four different texts in the Bible that we get. We first of all we get a text in Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then three in Isaiah. In Numbers and Deuteronomy, they're always described as seraphim serpents or seraphim snakes. In Isaiah, we get flying seraphim, and then in Isaiah 6 specifically, we get their kind of angelic being like in heaven. Like this is how they are in their spiritual abode area. And in there, they're described as these like snake-like figures that have six wings, two to cover their face, two to cover their feet, two to help them fly, and then uh, otherwise they also have hands. It's very clear that they have hands of some sort because they're holding tongs and they're putting coal up against Isaiah's mouth. We'll talk more about that when we get to Isaiah 6. But yeah, they're these human snake hybrids. The angelic version are these human snake hybrids, at least how we think of them. When we think of seraphim, it's going to be this picture of them. Otherwise, they're going to be fiery, burning snakes of some sort, or they're going to be flying snakes or something like that. It's unclear. It's not super consistent.
Okay, does it seem like they may be upgraded as the books, like as more books were added, as people kept writing? Like they
What do you
just
mean?
well, like they went from snakes to flying snakes to snakes with six wings to burning and things. It seems like a few more details were added
Yeah, I don't
here
know if it
and
was
there.
that they were necessarily added. I mean, maybe they were, but different texts use them for different purposes, I guess. Or we could maybe even think of these as different species of seraphim, perhaps. Like because seraphim they're clearly snake-like figures. So we have cobras, and you have little garden snakes, and you have all these different types of snakes. They do different things. All the snakes that we think of are little slitherers and whatnot, but to some extent they all differ. And like we see Genesis 3, the snake there that clearly walked on legs before it was cursed and had to slither on the ground. So none of these things are necessarily connected in the Bible, but it serves as a good example of how like they're conceptualized differently by different authors, and that's not necessarily saying that the later authors were like, oh, and also, but but I should also say that the Isaiah narrative probably was written before the Numbers and Deuteronomy narrative, or at least Isaiah 6, and that's very contentious, and I could be wrong there, but the dating of which one was first and which one was last or whatever is kind of neither here nor there for our conversation at this point. But it's not that the Isaiah 6 seraphim or the Numbers or Deuteronomy. Well, no, that's not true. I take that back. The seraphim in Isaiah 6 must have been written after the Numbers narrative.
I got a question about Genesis.
Cool. Okay.
Genesis 3, was the word different for the serpent there than it was
Yeah.
in Deuteronomy, Isaac, and Numbers?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for, distracting me from my mistake. But yeah, Isaiah 6 must have been written after Numbers 4 or Numbers 21. Sorry. But yeah, so the snake in Genesis 3 is going to be oh, what's the word? Nah, I have it in my notes somewhere. Nahash. So the snake in Genesis 3 is a Nahash, and as we see in Numbers and Deuteronomy, it's going to be the seraphim snake uses that same word. So it's going to be the Ha-Nahashim Ha-Seraphim, the snake seraphim. The ha at the beginning of those words are the. Um, so most of the time when we see the word snake in the Bible, it's going to be that word, the Nahash. But these five instances in Numbers, Deuteronomy, and thrice in Isaiah, we have the seraphim, which is going to be some other species of snake, this other idea of snake. But most translations only have, um, yeah, most translations, if not all, only have Isaiah 6 being transliterated as seraphim instead of translating that as, a snake of some sort. Because in Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the other two in Isaiah, they're flying snakes, they're burning snakes, or something along those lines. So this is a good example of how translation choices are always choices. They're always interpretation. A lot of interpreters who translate look at Isaiah 6, and it's hard to put these dirty snake creatures up in heaven, up in God's abode in the throne room. So instead of saying there's snakes up there, it's much easier conceptually for readers to think, oh, okay, they're seraphim. There's these separate things from snakes.
Okay. What do they do for God?
Yeah, they tend to be they seem to be protectors of some sort, and this is related to some other imagery in from that area, especially from Egypt. The the Uraeus is the Uraeus, something like that. We're going to call it Uraeus for continuing thought. And it's this picture of a snake with wings, and they're often there to represent protection of some sort. They're often placed on mummies to protect them from underworld snakes, or worn by people to like fend off normal snakes. It's this form of sympathetic magic that says, like, if you have this image of something, if you have this picture, whatever you have, an image of something, it will protect you from that item. And we see that in the number 6 narrative as well. So their role generally is to protect in some sort. The winged snake figure is going to protect often the king or pharaoh or god of some sort. So most of the time it's conceptualized that the seraph, in whatever culture it comes from, is going to be protective of some sort. It's definitely under God's employ, working for God, protecting something, being his hitman, something along those general things. You know, being scary, a scary guy that hangs out with God.
I really enjoyed this chapter because of the way the author related this to like The Godfather and mobs and
Mm.
hitmen and the comparison between those. I thought that was really entertaining and it helped get the point across because it was very weird to think like, oh, they were like little soldiers. They were
Mhm.
doing what they were told. They had an objective. They had a goal. There was something for them to do. He didn't just send them down willy-nilly.
Right.
Like, and so that was very delightful. So they
Yeah.
come from God to protect things. What else do we need to know about them?
So seraphim, first of all, Hebrew, if you see a word that ends with I am like that, it means it's plural. So the singular is going to be seraph. So the seraphim word seraph comes from a word that means burning or to burn or something like that. So there's also this uh, connection to burning, as we also see this in the text, as in Isaiah it burns his mouth, and the venom in Numbers is to it's kind of this venomous burning of when they attack the Israelites. So there's this connection to burning as well. So if we want to think about these creatures, they're if we want to put all of the descriptions together, they're going to be these burning six wings snake human like creatures, and they should be scary. We shouldn't be thinking of these as cute little guys. These are scary big guys.
These are the terrifying goons. They
Yeah.
are. Okay. All right. Well, where do we first meet them?
Let's start in Numbers 21. I don't think we've been in Numbers yet in our podcast.
Wow, guys. Welcome to Numbers.
Welcome to Numbers. This is an exciting place to be. I love Numbers. It's a great book, often criticized for being really boring, but that's just by people who haven't read Numbers and just see that it says it's called the word Numbers. It's much more interesting than that. So, we are in the middle of a narrative. This is part of the Exodus narrative still. They're, traveling from Egypt to the Promised Land. It's the 40 years of traveling as they do, of wandering, and we're at a period where there's lots of complaints against God, and they're like, why didn't we just stay in Egypt? Egypt, we were so much better then. All right, now life freaking sucks. It's awful. So they're they're complaining, and in response to those complaints, God sends these seraphim snakes to attack them and kill them and bite them and insert poison into them, venom into them. So it's this mass execution by snake that God dictates, seemingly to be like this overzealous dictator. Like, the punishment does not equal the crime here, at least in my opinion. These people are like, gosh darn it, this is pretty darn rough. This is a tough time to be alive. We should have just stayed in Egypt. And God's like, oh yeah, is that right? Here's a bunch of snakes. So I don't know if the punishment really meets the crime here, but maybe that's not for me to decide.
Well, I mean, it's First Amendment right meets firing squad, so
Sure.
I
This is
can't.
before the First Amendment, though, so like we should keep that. We should keep
I'm
that in
making it.
mind.
I'm making a comparison
Yeah,
that maybe people today would understand. Like, you're just standing there complaining. You're exercising your right to speak, and all of a sudden,
yeah,
that's crazy. That's such a crazy twist. And they don't really talk about this in church. I gotta say, I'm not familiar with their game.
yeah. I mean, a lot of churches tend to have a focus on the New Testament for sure, and books like Numbers are going to be, you know, kind of skipped over because they're kind of boring. Who knows what to talk about them, and who knows what to do with this story, especially as it goes on. We're only halfway through, but I don't know. I think I've heard it preached on once in my life. I couldn't remember where or when, but like as a kid, I'm familiar with it somewhere somehow. But no, this isn't a story that's embroidered onto your grandma's pillow. This is a kind of wild, fun story, which I think we should pay more attention to. I think was me going on a tangent again. If we want to like engage in religious text in a way that's important and meaningful to people, it confuses me why so many Christians just skip over these really wild, fun texts. I mean, fun perhaps is the wrong word because there's a lot of death happening here, but fun in the sense that you read this and you go, what the hell is going on? So I don't know. It confuses me. That baffles me. That baffles me just as much as the story baffles me. I don't know. I'm not in charge. But if I were doing these things, if I was like, hey, I'm a you know someone who spreads Christian recommendations and stuff like that, I'd be looking at these fun stories. And so I don't know. I don't know what the pastors and stuff are up to.
So bunch of people die. And then
Yeah,
does God give them some kind of warning or like a
right.
heads up?
So a bunch of people die, and God says, "Hey Moses," because Moses is still here, right? This is just
Hmm.
after the point where Moses is like, "I'm the most humble person ever."
Hmm.
That's irrelevant to the story, but I think it's fun to mention.
Yeah.
Um, Moses hears from God. God says, "Hey, make a bronze snake statue." And Moses says, "Okay, sounds good." So Moses makes the bronze snake statue. Good thing he has some bronze on him. And it and then God says, those who are like writhing on the floor, lying on the floor from the snake bites, if they look at it, they'll be healed. And bada bing, bada boom, solution to the problem. All is good, except for all the people that weren't able to see the serpent or the bronze snake and then died. And this is the part of the story that I'm familiar with as like Christian teaching. They look at this as like, oh, this is an example of God's mercy. God like having Moses make this thing, and like he's saving all these lives. But I mean, that also kind of looks over the fact that God is the one that sent these seraphim in the first place. So do with that what you will.
Ooh, that makes my tummy feel weird. Also, the bronze snake statue, it reminded me of Hermes' staff.
The
Like,
catechist.
yeah, that they
Okay.
also use in like, and it's also the symbol that's like on first aid kit with the winged snakies
First,
and like the, do you know what I'm talking about? Like Red Cross, like the
yeah,
medicinal thing.
that isn't that the rod of Asclepius?
But what I'm saying is there's like different versions of this kind of like a staff with a snake.
Sure,
You
sure.
can see
Okay,
it,
yeah,
and they all seem to represent healing
yeah. No, it's
of
a
some
very
kind.
common. Yeah, it's a very common symbol back then, even for snakes to represent healing or protection of some sort. So, like, like this is just a common image. You see a snake, you think healing, protection. We see that even today through like the rod of Asclepius. Um, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Who cares? But yeah, it's the symbol of protection for sure. But the weird thing is that it's we see the bronze snake statue as a protection against God, and this is where Esther Hamori, in the chapter I had you read, really uses the Godfather analogy, where like it's protection in the sense that it's protection against the Godfather from like stepping over the bounds.
My goons have come to rough you up so you can pay me for protection from my goons.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's effective. That's why people used it when
Hmm.
they had mobs and gangs.
Yeah.
Um, that's okay. That's a little terrifying. That's very terrifying,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. And we'll come back to this. This is like the important narrative.
Mhm.
So like the following narratives that we talk about will like refer back to this one, but we'll come back to it as we talk more about it. But next up, we see Deuteronomy 8, and this one is just kind of Moses talking again, reminding everyone of the snake attack. And he sees it as like a threat to keep people on the straight and narrow, keep them on the good path, follow God's commandments, do all the good things, because they need to follow God's commandments so that they will live. Not that they'll live well, not that they'll live long or whatever like that, just so they'll live. Follow God's commandments and you'll live. And people are like, yes, sir. And then and then it's a reminder of like, remember when we didn't follow God's commandments, and then all the seraphim snakes attacked us, and they're like, yes, of course, we will follow God's commandments.
Yep. So he immediately put like a leash on him with those.
Yeah. So then we get Isaiah 30.
Mhm.
I'm skipping over. We're going back now. We're going to the end of Isaiah and working our way towards the Isaiah 6 now. And this again kind of reads as like a poetic version of Moses' speech in Deuteronomy 6. Here we don't have the seraphim snakes now, we have the flying seraphim. Uh, and and this is Isaiah speaking on behalf of God, saying, like, hey, don't take military assistance from Egypt. That would be bad. We're going to destroy the Israelites if you don't follow God's commandments. Remember the seraphim and all that whole thing. Um, so again, we're reminding people of like to follow God's commandments, or the scary flying snakes will get you.
Why are we always beefing with Egypt?
You know, they're nearby. Why is New York always beefing with New Jersey? Because they're
Well, because
there.
New York is better.
Yeah.
Have you
Right.
seen Jersey? I'm just kidding. New Jersey, I love you.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Proximity breeds hatred, but still.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now they fly.
Yeah. So now they fly.
Now they fly.
And they fly also in Isaiah 14, where this is going to be in the midst of oracles against the nations. Uh, Isaiah is warning the uh, people of some people, some country.
Yeah, let's find them. Let's find
Yeah,
them. Where
Isaiah is
am I
warning someone.
going?
It doesn't matter. It's Isaiah 14:20. Isaiah 14:29.
Isaiah.
Isaiah is warning some people about the death of their oppressive ruler, and they're like, don't get too happy, don't get too comfortable, because from the root of that will be a snake, and from their offspring will be a flying seraph. So it's like, you're don't get too excited. There's going to be worse things happening and it uses the seraphim as a metaphor of God's rage, of God's violence. So we don't see the seraphim ever again in numbers, but we get threats with them. We get references to them until we get to Isaiah 6, which is going to be a different kind of breed of the seraphim because they're up in heaven doing their own thing. Heaven,
Evan.
God's throne room, however you want to describe it.
Okay.
So we just see this that the seraphim are continually linked with death and wilderness and God's promise to destroy the disobedient. That's kind of the go-to correlation between the seraphim and like the events that are going on.
Okay.
All right.
I don't think I have any questions yet. Sorry, continue.
Cool. Okay, so now we're in Isaiah 6. And here in Isaiah, we have God depicted as this enormous, huge celestial being. God is a big, big God. His clothes takes up like all of the area that they're in. God is very big. This is a common way to depict gods in the ancient Near East. God's a big God. And then around God, we have the flying seraphim, and they're with the six wings, two wings. We already talked about this, two wings covering their face, two wings covering their feet, two wings flying, helping them fly around.
If you can't see Matthew because you're listening, he did quotation marks around feet because he means genitals.
Right. It is common in ancient Israel writing to have feet be a euphemism for genitalia. I think I agree with that interpretation here. I think this could also be a merism happening here. They're covering their head and their feet, or in other words, they're covering their entire body. So there's the wings that are protecting themselves from something. We'll talk about what they're protecting themselves from in a couple minutes. But I think that it's more reasonable. I think it's both. I think it's doing both. That it's protecting genitalia and also protecting their whole body. The point of their wings covering them up is the sense of protection that's happening. And I think that's the takeaway we should get from their description of what their wings are doing.
Okay.
Oh, but yeah, as the vision continues, we get the seraphim speaking with a thunderous voice, and we get the famous line that you've probably heard: "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of armies, the Lord of hosts." Um, and I think, have we talked about that yet? Have I talked about Lord of Hosts yet?
Nope.
Okay, so Lord of Hosts, I think, is a horrible translation because it doesn't like it's a valid translation, but the common connotations that we have with the word host now, I don't think is getting across the idea that this is trying to get across. When you hear Lord of Hosts, what do you think?
Lord of the dinner party.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think that's a very good way of thinking about this. I think a much better translation would be Lord of Armies or something like that. This is going to be a military term and should be reflected as such in translation.
Okay.
So we have to imagine this scene now with that in mind. We've got these scary humanoid snake flying creature things that are probably burning or something, singing at the top. They're singing at the top of their lungs. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord General of our army. So great is our war commander. And that should be a little freaky. That should make you go, uh-oh, that's scary.
A little freaky.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Continue.
But yeah, and also we should note snakes don't talk. So these snakes are talking. There's something funky going on. But as we've seen previously, the Bible has no problem with talking snakes. We get talking snakes in Genesis 3. We get talking snakes here as well. But then at this point, Isaiah cries out. He says, "I'm a man of unclean lips. My lips are dirty." In other words, like he's spoken poorly against God. He's sinned or something. He sinned with his mouth. So a seraph flies over and gets some tongs with some burning coal in it, and he presses it up against Isaiah's lips. This is a violent action. Often we think of, cleansing by fire to be, poetic and it's been toned down a little bit in cleansing by fire. But this is a violent action that we should see it as such, and you should go ouchie, ouchie, ouch. That would hurt, because that would indeed hurt. But after that, God's asking another famous line that we hear: "Who will go for us? Who will go for me? Who will do all this?" And Isaiah's like, "I will. I'll go to it. I'll do this thing." And God's message is that the people of Israel should keep hearing but don't understand, keep seeing but not perceive. God is telling Isaiah to make the heart of the Israelite people to be indifferent. And Isaiah, hopefully appalled by this, says, "How long? How long should this go on for? That seems a little funky to me. That seems not super good." And like this is terrifying. God is like announcing his plans to like destroy the earth, and like this is even terrifying the Seraphim. That I think the Seraphim here are protecting themselves from God with their wings. Well, normally their job is to protect God. Here we've got God in some angry mode here. God is saying, we want the Israelites to be, indifferent to what's going on so that we can make everything a vile wasteland. It's a scary scene, and I think it's very easy, if you're not looking at this very closely and carefully, to just read this as like, oh yeah, something's happening, moving on. But I think the biblical authors were very, very intentionally creating a scary scene here.
The this is Isaiah's dream. This is something that's commonly talked about in church, isn't it? Like,
What was that?
is this a common story that's told in church? I'm trying to
I
remember
mean,
what story this is.
yeah, I mean, I've heard of it. I don't know how common it is. Like, there's plenty of passages in Isaiah that are much more common than this one. So, like, Isaiah is sometimes called like the fifth gospel because the
Mhm.
New Testament quotes Isaiah so much, and because of that, a lot of churches will go to Isaiah more often than Amos or Jeremiah or whatever, just because it has so many, just because the New Testament authors and later Christians have made so many ties to Isaiah and Christianity, or Isaiah and the New Testament, that Isaiah is frequently more talked about. But we get famous quotes from here, like Revelation quotes the holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts as well, and those lines are, I hear those quoted every once in a while in Christian settings as well. As I also hear the quote, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" These are common verses in Christian conversations. I don't know if this exact story is super,
Okay.
super common, but they definitely pull from these verses.
Okay. And the word angel, like the word seraphim, do you think it's maybe I should have looked at other translations to see if they translated it as like angel, if there's some translations that just have it like not specific.
Right. So I don't think of any translations that would translate this as angel. Angel is usually the word malek or something like that,
Mm,
which can also be translated as messenger of some
mm,
sort. The biblical idea of angels and like our idea of angels definitely differ a lot from you know the different conceptions of each other.
mm.
So modernly, how we would think of angels, these would definitely be categorized under the category of angel. But I don't know if the categorization of angels when this was written was so set in stone, so clearly defined. God, it's thought of as so we see in the verse. Then I heard the voice in chapter or 6:8. This the whom shall I send? Who will go for us? God is asking who will go for us, not who will go for me. Um, and the idea there is, as we've talked about this before, we have the divine council that is, in God's throne room, that God is talking with his colleagues and stuff like that. So that also includes these divine beings that consist of seraphim, cherubim, all sorts of different beings of that sort that are divine beings of some sort. What is or what isn't an angel is different. So like when we talked about last time with Abraham and Isaac, all we
Mm.
had there was an angel talking to Abraham there. So that one was this general ministering angel that was a messenger from God saying,
Okay.
hey, don't do these things, yada, yada, yada. So there's different categorizations, but if we want to put these in that category, the seraph is going to be a much more specific designation than just angel. So it
Okay.
wouldn't be translated as just angel.
Okay. Not me wondering how King James did it.
King James did, or not King James, but the King James translation did
Mm.
seraphim in Isaiah 6 and elsewhere. It was going to be either burning serpents, burning snakes, or flying snakes, flying serpents in
Okay.
Isaiah. Um, in Deuteronomy and Numbers, it was going to be the burning snakes
Okay.
or serpents. I don't remember.
It's all snakes to us. Is let me think of some other things that I had a question about the bronze snake and the comparison to
Mhm.
Jesus.
Okay, so in John chapter 3,
Mm.
Jesus refers to the serpent in Numbers in comparing the Son of Man, both being lifted up. The serpent, presumably, here was for healing those people, the Son of Man being lifted up, presumably for eternal life or whatever John is talking about in that section there. John's just making a comparison between the two. But there's also that John could also be referring to that same bronze serpent is also called the oh, let me look at it because I'll pronounce it wrong. Um, the Nehushtan. So and I'm still probably pronouncing that wrong, but there was the bronze snake that Moses made was later called the Nehushtan or Nehushtan. Nehushtan. We're going with that. Nehushtan. I don't know. Tell me in the comments that I'm pronouncing this wrong. Oh, and we get this in 2 Kings 18:4, where it talks about King Hezekiah who's destroying a bunch of things in the temple that are false idol worship or whatever. And one of the things that he destroys is this Nehushtan. Uh, and it's the bronze statue that Moses made. And this is, at the time of Isaiah, when this happened, at the time of writing Isaiah, where Isaiah is very aware of the symbolism of this, snake statue in the temple. So as Isaiah is talking about his dream sequences, as he's prophesying, it's very common in Southwest Asian thought to kind of imagine the deity's temple to be a reflection of their cosmic area. So because there's that snake in the temple, that's going to be transported up cosmically in God's throne room in the heavens in up there. So Isaiah is making that intentional connection there back to Numbers, saying, "Hey, remember this bronze statue that we have? It's also happening up in God's throne room up in heaven. What does that mean? What is the purpose behind this?" So I think what we have there is that in the desert snake attack in Numbers, there's the seraphim snakes are burning people with their venom, begging for their lives, and the people acknowledge that they spoke against God. Likewise, here Isaiah is saying that he has sinned with his mouth of some sort. We don't ever get any explanation of what that sin is, and I think that's because it's intentionally being Isaiah stepping in for the people of Israel, stepping in for their sins. That's kind of the idea that's happening in this prophetic sequence, and it's making an allusion back to the desert people and the seraphim. But in the desert, the immediate response was for the bronze snake to be raised. But here, God's message is kind of the opposite. It's that Isaiah needs to prevent people from looking and being healed, and it's kind of the symbol of healing is thrust into the vision, but no healing occurs. So something deeply prophetic is happening in these verses by referring back to Numbers. And this is why I was talking about earlier that Isaiah must have been written after Numbers, because it was referring back to Numbers through this, and that's why I got so confused.
And it all circles back.
Yeah.
We and it all comes back together. Wow. So that's a lot. That's a lot for a creature that is not commonly talked about, like
Yeah. No,
within
it's
church settings.
definitely a lot going on for sure.
Wow. Okay. I'm a little bit more terrified now.
Good, good.
Looking forward to getting to these parts in our yearly reading.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to touch on?
I think I think that's all my general thoughts about the Seraphim at this point. I'm sure there's so many more things to talk about. If you have any more questions for us or for people who know more than us, put it in the comments, and we'll hopefully start a conversation, start a little chit chat, and we'll talk about Seraphim or whatever else you want to talk about. Put it in the comments.
Thank you guys for joining us today. You can find us on TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, email.
Facebook.
I'm Facebook.
We're
Facebook
technically on
indeed.
Facebook.
We are. I'm like, I feel like I had something else, but I really don't know. No, that was just, honestly, I'm just in shock. I'm just in shock and I am terrified and I am now going to have nightmares of winged things that are covering other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have been the religious treehouse.
We still are the religious treehouse, also.
It's, I don't
But
know how to end this. Like,
thank you all for listening. This has been a great chat. Tell us, send us pictures. Yeah, send us pictures of your Seraphim that you think Seraphim would look like. That's what I want to
someone
see.
someone draw this for me. Can we please get some drawings? I need some artists on this. I need to visualize because
Yeah,
I'm having
no,
a
that'd be
hard
great.
time.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a ton out there. But yeah, let us know. Send us your thoughts. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.